Hi, ITV community. My name is Michal Harris, and Rabbi Reitan asked me today to talk to you about Parashat Shavua, which is Parashat Yitro. So here it is. Okay, so here's my Tanakh. Parashat Yitro is like a really interesting parasha because there are so many exciting things that happen in this parasha. The first thing that happens is that Moshe's father-in-law, his wife Tzipora, her father came to visit the nation of Israel, and specifically Moshe, after they defeated Amalek in last week's parasha. And he said a lot of things to Moshe. He was very proud of Moshe for everything that happened. And he also noticed that Moshe was taking on a lot of the burden of judging the nation. So of course, I'm a lawyer. I work in international inheritance. So of course, I have to talk about the legal aspects of this parasha. And then I'm also going to get to some other aspects a little bit later. But basically, Yitro said to Moshe, what is this? Why are you taking on the burden of this whole nation? Anytime anyone had a problem or some sort of an argument with their neighbor, they would come to Moshe, and Moshe was sitting all day and all night judging the nation. And Moshe said, look, I don't know, what am I supposed to do? And so Yitro says to him, in this parasha, he says to him that he has to create a system, a legal system, to help the nation, which was now millions of people, I think, deal with their problems, which wouldn't involve Moshe sitting with them every day, all the time. And he says in Pasuk Kaf Aleph 21, and you shall discern among the entire people men of accomplishment, God-fearing people, men of truth, people who despise money, and you shall appoint them leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50s, and leaders of 10s. And what this means is that he instructed Moses to create a legal system that started from the bottom up. So for example, there would be hundreds of people. First, there would be thousands. So there would be, the lowest level court system, so to speak, would judge the thousands. And then those that couldn't be judged by those particular judges would move up to the leaders of hundreds, right? That they would deal with the more difficult cases. And then leaders of 50s, leaders of 10s, until the most difficult cases would be handled directly by Moshe Rabbeinu. And actually, we could see today that this is the basis of the modern court system, where we have the general court, right? Here in Israel, we have the Bet HaMishpat HaMechozi, which is like, and here in Tel Aviv, it's Bet HaMishpat HaShalom, the Shalom Court, which basically deals with all the matters. And then once the matters, if they're not dealt with properly or are more complicated, go higher and higher until they reach the Supreme Court of Israel. Or in any other country. And so here we can probably see the basis for all the modern day legal systems, which is really exciting because I love to see how Torah has affected our lives today. And this is one example in this parasha of something that affects us every day, dealing with the law, especially me, but I know a lot of people. So that's the first cool thing about our parasha. The second thing about this parasha, which I found really interesting, was that this is the parasha where basically we get the Torah. Moshe goes up to Har Sinai, and God talks to him and gives him the 10 commandments. It's obviously like a tremendous moment for us as a nation. And out of all the things that happen, there are so many interesting things in the 10 commandments. I'm sure you feel the same way. One of the interesting things I decided to talk about today is the idea of the inheritance, the multi-generational inheritance of our deeds, our good deeds and our bad deeds. So basically, in Perek Kaf, Pasuk Hey, God talks about worshiping idols, and specifically he says, you shall not bow to them because I am your God. And he says there that he actually visits, and sorry, it's a little bit negative, but he visits the sins of the fathers on the children, on the grandchildren, and on the great-grandchildren, 4 generations down. But then he follows up by saying, Oseh chesed la'alafim v'le'ohavei v'shomrei mitzvotai. That actually the ones who do good things, it's generated, thousands of times. According to the rabbis, thousands of times actually means that the good deeds go down 10 generations. So I've always been fascinated with this idea that the things that we do actually affect more than us. They affect multi-generations. And we could see a similar language in another parasha, a little bit later on in Shemot, after the Ten Commandments are broken, and Moshe goes up again to get the Ten Commandments again. God repeats this, obviously in different words, and it's also something that we say on Yom Kippur. Part of what Moshe is saying, which is so important for us, is something that we repeat so many times. It's called the 13 attributes of mercy, 13 midot harachamim, where we say, we tell God that He is, basically a righteous God, a merciful God, and that He will absolve us of all of our, sins. And part of that we say, and He will, kind of clean away. But what we don't say, we cut off the part there on Yom Kippur where actually it says that God will not clean away the things that we do that are not so good, and they will go down for 4 generations. But once again, it's repeated that there's chesed le'alafim, that the good deeds are, again, multiplied by thousands. So going back to our parasha, and we see how important this is because it's reflected in Shemot Lamed Daled also later at the second giving of the Ten Commandments. I kind of was thinking about the relationship between these psukim and the most recent scientific discoveries in this area, where actually there's an area called epigenetic transgenerational inheritance. And what this means is in the past few years, scientists have actually discovered that many things that happen to us in our lives actually are passed down in our DNA for multiple generations. So the regular DNA that we pass down is genetics that come from, I'm not a scientist, but a mix of our ancestors and, grandparents, great-grandparents, etc. And we thought that was just genetics that's like fixed in the DNA. But apparently there's an additional layer of that DNA that does absorb environmental factors. And part of those environmental factors could be, good things or bad things that people have gone through. Now, most of the science today is focused, obviously, of course, on the bad things. I don't think that they've gotten to the good things yet. But based on this parasha, I think that this science is basically supporting what's happening here, where God is telling us that the things that we do, the things that we experience in our lives, good things, bad things, these things are not only affecting us, they are affecting our families and generations to come. And I find this to be a very inspiring and interesting thing to think about as I go through life, thinking about the things that I do, or maybe you should also think about, like, if you do something good for someone else or go through an amazing experience or do some sort of a mitzvah, think to yourself that actually it's not just affecting you, but it could be, if it's impactful enough. Obviously the science is still unknown, but if this parasha is any indication, these things, the good deeds that you do, will be passed on for alfei, multiple generations of your offspring, and they will be blessed through the good things that you do. So I want to wish on all of us a Shabbat Shalom, and that, all of our good deeds should be multiplied through the generations, and that we should keep in mind that everything we do has meaning beyond our own lives, and will hopefully affect our generations, our children, for many generations to come. Shabbat Shalom.